white Russians. One evening, while changing the water in the vases, I ad-lib the lines to Pretty Woman in the hallway mirror, the part where she talks about being a princess trapped in a tower. Suddenly, in the mirror, I see Mr. Kong watching me. But he doesn't watch me like the gringos do in Central, openly, lewdly. Mr. Kong watches me with one scary eye in between the hinges of the door of the kitchen. Then, one afternoon, as I come in from mopping the outside terrace, Mrs. Kong is standing in the lobby with a packed valise. "Madam," I ask. "Call Mr. Kong in office to pick up Chillin, Alina. Cook them omelets for dinner. I don't want Ling Ling stay up too late. If Chillin cry, tell them I call them from Phuket." "Phuket, madam?" "Yes. I go vacation. I be back next week." "But does Mr. Kong know where you're going, madam?" "No, but he no care anyway." She laughs bitterly, and then I'm alone with the Chillin. I've never called Mr. Kong at the office before. Trembling, I say, "Mr. Andrew Kong, please?" as soon as a female answers in rapid Cantonese. I breathe a sigh of relief when, instead of interrogating me, she simply says, "Wait a minute." When Mr. Kong comes on, the words stick to my mouth like pellets. "Hello, anyone there?" "Mrs. Kong, sir. She's left for Phuket." "Who's this?" "Alina, sir." "What's the matter, Alina?" His voice is sharp with surprise. "Mrs. Kong, sir, she's left for Phuket. She says she come back next week. She asks you to pick up children, but she gone, sir." There's only silence from his end. "What time?" he finally says, sounding tired, and I like to think gloomy, but not angry, so maybe I won't get hit with a frying pan. "She left at 4, sir." "No, I mean, what time do I pick up the kids?" "Oh, 5, sir. 5:30 latest." "Damn it, it's 10 to 5. There's a lot of bawling that night, little Skeeter sniffles even when asleep, and there's a trail of yellow mucus down his cheek. Ling Ling throws all her dolls at me, and I pick them up and put them in the treasure chest. She repeats this tantrum while Mr. Kong sits in the kitchen with his newspaper, but I notice he's on the same page still an hour later. When it's finally time for Ling Ling to go to bed, I see her dolls scattered around the floor. All their heads have been neatly scissored off. Over the next few days, I do what I can for the Kongs, who all look amputated, as if missing an integral limb and can only hobble from place to place. Skeeter will not eat, even though I try to entice him with the stir-fries he likes. I boil Mr. Kong his chicken medicinal soup. Ling Ling says she wants to write Mrs. Kong a letter and mail it to Phuket. I give her pen and paper. She comes out with a drawing of a giant squid sucking up the sun. "What's that?" I ask. "Phuket," she says. Mr. Kong continues to massage his turnip, slowly, deliberately, his eyes watching me. At night, I worry about Jose. I try not to think of him being out with another woman, but my mind keeps filling with images of Mrs. Kong in Phuket with that young man from the medicine shop. It's been 10 days, and there is no Mrs. Kong. That night, I ask Mr. Kong, "Are you going to try to find her, Mr. Kong?" Mr. Kong looks up from sipping soup. Since Mrs. Kong's departure, he has insisted I take dinner with the family. These dinners are awkward silences, only the tinkle of the soup spoon against the tureen, the children in bed, me and him watching the bark or fungus or dried tofu swirl around the milky brown liquid. Occasionally, a chicken neck bobs up when I use the ladle. Now he looks back at me as if I've just spoken to him in Tagalog. "If she comes back, she comes back." He heaves a sigh full of dust. "But maybe you should call her." I look pointedly at the Phuket number scrawled in big letters across the calendar hanging atop the spice rack. "She's on vacation. She does not want to be disturbed. You know how she is if you disturb her when she's doing something." Yes. Bang, bang, a quick whack to the head. I know. But I don't say this. I purse my lips instead. "What will you do if she doesn't come back?" He drops his spoon and holds his head in his hands. "I don't know, Alina." He looks so sad and confused. I'm embarrassed for him. How's the sesame chicken I made for you?" "I can't think about food," he groans. He looks up, eyes glistening like watermelon rinds. Suddenly, his hand is on my arm, a pale, milky claw. We don't need Mrs. Kong, Alina. I react in alarm and drop the spoon, the liquid scalding him. He draws his hand back quickly. Afraid, I scrape my chair back and make to grab the dishcloth made of Mrs. Kong's old dresses to wipe his hand dry. This time, he reaches again for my hand, and he doesn't let go. Alina, listen to me. It took me a long time to get up the courage to say this. God knows I'm much older than you, and I'm married with children. It's a bit sudden, but just give me a chance. You'll see that it can work. My mind struggles to match the words I've just heard to their unbelievable meaning. Sir? Trembling, I try to yank my arm away. Months later, I'll remember the tortured pose we were in. I, half risen from my chair, one arm reaching for the dishcloth, and the other being pulled back by Mr. Kong, while he holds on for dear life, still sitting down, soup dribbling down his chin, and the only word that comes to my mind is, Stucky. Alina, I've mulled over how to best say this, how to convince you of my intentions. Do you know how I sometimes stay late in the office? It's because I'm afraid of letting my feelings show, of not being able to control myself. I renew my struggle to get free at this. But it seems I can't help it. Your face torments me every day. I find myself practicing what I'll say to you in the office. At home, my fantasies overwhelm me. You and I could be the ones in Phuket now. At home? I say stupidly, but some hidden knowledge is struggling to reveal itself to me. Yes, many times I thought you'd suspect, the way I was practicing my overtures. Haven't you heard me rehearsing my speech to you? This rehearsed rant that sounds like a bad Canton movie? Haven't you seen me practice so I wouldn't be inept? The word comes to my lips unbidden. Turnip? Yes, my darling, that turnip is you. A wave of disgust, profound and dizzying, uncoils inside. Sir, let me go. I insist, please. I wrench my fist away, only to have him rise from his chair and grab me around the waist. Oh, Alina, we can be such a comfort to each other, especially now. Stop it. Let me go. Sir, please. Stucky, 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 my mind chants. Struggling desperately, my mind hovers over the choice between mute submission or being fired. Together, Alina, we'll make happiness again. Sir, you're upset, but... I can't finish because Mr. Kong's mouth is on mine and his tongue is a lizard peeping through a crack in a dry wall. I manage to twist away and, just as I've seen them do in movies, I move my knee upward in one swift motion, making hard contact with his nether parts. He doubles over, cupping his crotch, and lets me go. Stucky, 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 Stucky. I bring my elbow down between his two scapulas, as if perfecting a karate chop, and as he jerks one hand up to reach around his back, lifting up his face, I pull my fist back and pop him one in the eye. Our tussle upended. The dining table in the soup tureen lurches and tips over as a liquid sloshes down onto Mr. Kong's naked feet. He yelps, keels over, and curls on the floor like dried shrimp. I brush at the trailing wisp of hair on my forehead. Looking up, Mrs. Kong stands in the doorway, sporting a tan, her mouth agape. Pandemonium begins with a P for police. Their radios cackle back and forth. Mr. Kong holds an ice pack to his eye. One can easily see his feet are none the worse for wear. It's just drinking soup. Ah, Sui, I say. But P.C. Chan's head bobs vigorously as he listens to Mrs. Kong. She smokes and draws up a complaint. She doesn't look at me when she tells P.C. Chan I've been plotting to be Mr. Kong's mistress ever since I took up employment with them. All these pretty amas behave like prostitutes, he says, and his eyes on me are cold and murderous. When they lead me away, I turn to him and say, It's just like the movies. I'm in the movies now. Spend one night in a Hong Kong cell. The walls are cement cinder blocks without windows, and the bars are behind me of the cages Abuela kept her prized roosters in. The bars remind me of the cages Abuela kept her prized roosters in. I sleep on a cold cement bench, and there's no blanket. Deep in the night, my heart aches to hold my little girl, and I cry out for Jose. But he cannot hear me now. I sing softly to myself, ballads my abuela taught me when I was little, and the sound of my own voice makes me scared. The next morning, a police officer calls my name and opens the cell door. Afraid of where he's going to take me next, I hang back on the bench, my eyes wide and my breath coming heavy. You're free to go. His voice bounces around the cell. Outside in the main booking room, I see Mrs. Kong in a silvery dress, smoking. She looks at me quick, then she turns smartly and heads out the door. Hurry up, you bad egg. You give me enough trouble last night. Now I have to pay your bail. I take out from your salary, you understand? What I feel is bitterness, sudden, piercing. I don't feel grateful. She has all the power. I should be happy I'm not going to jail, but I don't feel relief. The station door is open, and the humid air blows in. It smells sweet and clammy. The police officer hands me my watch. I can see he's wondering why I don't take it. In her car, Mrs. Kong says, Speeder won't eat when I feed him. Ling Ling behave like wild monkey. Finally, Mrs. Kong looks at me, her face with makeup looking like a Chinese porcelain doll. It's what I see in her eyes that suddenly looms up close like a shadow on my heart. A wildness, a grasping, and I realize she's lost without me.